Tashdile, this is Sakina Bhatt and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly news on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. His Holiness the Dalai Lama conducts a 3-day teachings to a group of Indian devotees at Kalmykia. Time for serious action to combat climate change is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's message to COP24 summit. His Holiness the Dalai Lama CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye and the Tibetan Parliament condoles demise of former US President George H.W. Bush. President of Republic of Kalmykia calls on His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Thank You Australia event held in Canberra. His Holiness the Dalai Lama conducted a 3-day teachings to a group of Indian devotees at Kalmykia in India, organized by the Youth Buddhist Society of India, which started on Monday this week. Addressing more than 15,000 people, His Holiness implored that Indian understanding of secular is truly befitting in today's world. If you respect all communities of religion and those without, you will not indulge in violence or harming others. It's very important for us to take an earnest lesson from these 1,000-year-old secular principle. Tagging himself as a practicing student of Nalanda tradition, His Holiness said he sees the relevance of the ancient wisdom and endeavors to revive it in modern India. His Holiness said he has faith that the younger generation of India can bring the change through reviving the teachings of ancient Indian wisdom. His Holiness further conducted on the introduction to Buddha's teachings, giving the discourse on Shantideva's guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Considering Shantideva's text as one of the most important texts for disciplining one's mind, His Holiness underlined that the purpose of religion is to train our mind constructively and inspire love and compassion in our daily lives, and that it is not only about building temples. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has urged world leaders meeting in Poland for the COP24 climate conference to take a serious transformative action on tackling climate change and find constructive solutions to global warming. Delegates and decision makers from almost 200 countries are currently meeting at the 24th conference of the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Poland. The conference aims to hammer out a roadmap for putting into practice the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has for many decades advocated for environmental and climate change action. He has authored many articles and opinions on protecting the world's environment. His Holiness also made environment conservation one of his 3 lifelong commitments. His Holiness the Dalai Lama CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye and the Tibetan Parliament condoles demise of former US President George H.W. Bush earlier this month. In a condolence letter, His Holiness said, "He was in fact the first American president that I was privileged to meet. I recall being deeply touched by his concern for the Tibetan people and the situation in Tibet." Extending condolences to family and friends of the deceased, Dr. Singye said, "After the historic meeting in April 1991, George H.W. Bush administration released the first official statement on Tibet in which he raised concerns over human rights abuses in Tibet and urged for an earnest resumption of dialogue between the envoys of His Holiness and the Chinese government. The stance was echoed by the Obama administration in its official statement in June 2016. Offering his solidarity, the Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament in exile, Pema Jungne, mentioned about the resolute support extended by the deceased and his entire family in the history of Tibetan struggle. The 41st President of the United States passed away at age 94 at his home in Houston on 30th November. The head of the Republic of Kalmykia, Alexei Orlov, called on His Holiness the Dalai Lama at the latter's residence in Dharamshala on Friday last week. Over the meeting, His Holiness spoke about the historical, cultural and spiritual affinity between the people of Tibet and Russia, underlining the shared Buddhist heritage dating back to the 17th century. His Holiness acknowledged the ongoing drafting project of a secular ethics curriculum for schools in the Republic of Kalmykia and encouraged the President to effectively introduce the curriculum. President Orlov offered special greetings to His Holiness as he appraised him of the Kalmykia New Year, which falls on 2nd December. CTA President Dr. Lobsang Singye presided over the Thank You Australia event organized by the Office of Tibet Australia, held at the Australian Parliament on Wednesday this week. This is a part of Thank You Year campaign initiated by Central Tibetan Administration for the year 2019.
The first Tibetan person to come to Australia was 1971. And the first Buddhist center which was established, now it has spread around the world, was 1976. And I think the first Prime Minister to welcome His Holiness Dalai Lama was Paul Keating in 1992, and John Howard met him twice. And I think there are around 1,200 statements made in the Senate and 1,000 statements on Tibet made in the House. So Australia has set a good record for other countries to follow.
Special guest Honorable Ken White, Minister of the Indigenous Health, remarked on the similarity in the situation of Tibetans and indigenous people of Australia.
And today is special because Australia has always welcomed Tibetan people who contribute to our community. You bring with you your culture, your history, but also art and the foods that you share. And you've become part of our family.
He added that this affinity naturally invokes his strong support for the Tibetan people and that he understands the struggle Tibetans continue to face to preserve their identity and endure the continuity of his support for the Tibet cause. In their addresses, other guest parliamentarians and senators expressed their support and also shared that the support for Tibet in Australia is across the political spectrum and throughout the different political parties. So much for this week. See you next time and have a great weekend.